Record to recording. We are now recording.
Okay, we'll cut it in post. It's fine. It'll be edited nicely. All right. Without further ado, thank you very much for coming today. I am Sean from Five Climate Hub, and my on my left on my screen, but maybe right or below me on your screen is my manager Andy, who is the manager of the Five Climate Hub. And on the right on my screen and somewhere on your screen is Catherine Gemmell from Marine Conservation Society, who is the Policy and Advocacy Manager. And the amount of times that I went onto your LinkedIn to double check your title so I got it right or went on my all the writing, you know. I just wanted to say that at some point, just in case you're like, why Sean viewed my profile so many times? But there we are. That's why. Catherine's going to run through a little presentation first to explain the importance of public consultation. So without further ado, I will pass the reins and the torch to Catherine.
Thanks so much, Sean. And thank you so much for giving up your time, everyone, for coming along to this. So I'm just going to share my screen and take us through a few slides. So as Sean said, I work for the Marine Conservation Society. I'm a policy and advocacy manager. I've been with the charity for it'll be 10 years this May. I'm based up in the northeast of Scotland, so up in Murray. So familiar with the Murray and the Highland climate hubs. And you guys do amazing work across the country, which is brilliant. But most of my work has then been based in Scotland. Previous to this role, I was the Scotland Conservation Officer. So you're probably right, Sean, in trying to sense check roles. You're like, that doesn't sound too familiar. And for me, I kind of started in this sector coming from an environmental education background. I'd never really heard about public consultations, didn't know what policy and advocacy meant at all. And then on this journey, I've actually learned how important these things are for marine conservation to give the ocean a voice. And I'm just like, this is absolutely wild that we're not taught this in school, or people just don't know this is how you can engage, this is how you can be a voice for the ocean and have your voice heard. So I popped together this presentation for some of our Sea Champion volunteers a couple of years ago, and I've just been kind of reusing it since, when it's literally just my personal learnings, how I approach consultations, and just sharing with folk to see if it might help them start to engage or actually just start to demystify it all a little bit. So we will just start with the basics, because this is the questions I was asking myself. What actually is a consultation? What are we actually talking about? So I did go to the Scottish Government website. It is actually a great resource to go onto the website and literally just ask questions like this, and all the different useful articles come up. The Scottish Parliament website is also a fantastic resource for kind of trying to upskill yourself and increase awareness about parliamentary process and everything like that as well. So if you're interested, I would definitely encourage making yourself a cup of tea at some point and having an explore of both of the websites. So this is where I got this definition from, that consultation is an essential part of the policy making process, and it gives the Scottish Government the opportunity to consider your, mine, everyone's opinion and expertise on a proposed area of work. Basically, it's a glorified survey. They basically are asking questions of the public that they want to hear, and what we think, if we've got any kind of evidence to back up what we think, but sometimes it's literally just sharing your opinion on something. So we're obviously here tonight with Five Climate Hub to talk about the Seabird Action Plan and the consultation around this. But what I'm going to be sharing can be applied to a consultation on anything that you might be passionate or interested in. So everything from conservation to education to justice, everything is consulted on. And these are the different tools and kind of hints and tips that you can use and apply it to everything. So I definitely check out the web link there. I'll share these slides so they can go around to everyone afterwards as well. You can sign up to mailing lists, so they tell you what consultations are open or coming up, and they're good just to kind of keep an eye on to see which ones you might want to engage with. Now, there is also the same for the UK government. So depending what you're interested in, what you would like to follow might depend on whether that falls in the power of the Scottish government or is reserved to the UK government. So also feel free to check that out. And there's obviously consultations coming out of the UK government all the time as well. So if we actually then look at what we're talking about here as a public consultation from the Scottish government, what are they sending out and what's it all about? So usually when they publish a consultation, it will come out as a consultation paper. which will cover the issue. So it will kind of detail everything that has kind of been done so far on the issue. We'll give context pieces, we'll maybe give some research, and just that lets everyone know what we're actually talking about and what they're going to be asking about. And then there's usually a way for then you to give your views back on that issue. And they can be done in quite a few different ways. Most of the time now they're done through an online portal, but you can still do it by email, and you still can also do it by post as well. So make sure that none of this is a barrier to you being able to take part. There's usually always contact information as part of this consultation paper. And then what you kind of then put in is known as a consultation response. You're responding to that survey, to those questions. And what happens is once you've submitted your opinion, your research, anything that you want to put in your response, this is then analysed by the Scottish Government, and it's part of the process of them making decisions on whether they need to bring in new laws, whether they need to change something, or create a plan or a strategy. So it is just kind of one piece of the wider puzzle, but it's a really important piece because it's actually one of the easiest ways we can all engage directly with Scottish Government, and for us, very much be a voice for nature, which can't obviously log online and give its opinion. So that's kind of where I see a lot of our role as conservationists. And then once they've done all their analysis, they will then publish a report. So this doesn't necessarily say what they're going to do. It is literally just a review of what everyone put in. Now, when you respond, you can choose to keep it anonymized, or you can obviously publish it with your name. And if you're representing an organization, you then put the organization's name in there, and that will then be as part of the report for the analysis. This can be really useful if you are campaigning on an issue or want to know that what might be happening next. For me in my work, it's really interesting to see who's maybe responded that maybe doesn't agree with what we've put forward as a conservation organisation. It maybe makes me realise who I need to engage with to maybe try and bring them onto our side, or what kind of learning can happen there as well. And also it's a great learning tool. You'll find that sometimes academics will be responding, businesses will be responding, and there's all this extra information. If it's an issue you really care about, it's really good to have another read through and see what other people are thinking about that issue. So I just thought I'd share a few examples of responses that I have worked on while at the Marine Conservation Society, really to show you how different they can be as well. I think there's no two consultations that will look the same. So don't be alarmed if you're like, oh, this looks too much. Is this enough? Everything looks a little bit different. So this first one was when they were looking at banning single-use plastic products, and there was a lot of yes, no, maybe questions. So sometimes a consultation will literally just be tick boxes that you can go through and either say, yep, you agree, no, you don't agree, prefer not to answer. So sometimes they can look really long, but it actually doesn't take too long to go through to tick through it. Sometimes they can be on quite wide issues as well. So this was one all around circular economy and actually developing the kind of Scottish Government's thinking on it as well. So there were some agreement questions, but there were then also chances to specify our thinking as well. So you'll see at the bottom there, there's then that opportunity to add in extra information and explain why you've maybe said yes or no, or decided that you're not sure. Sometimes they can be very complex policy areas. So this is an example from one of the deposit return scheme consultations for bottles and cans that we worked on. And because I think it was an issue that was very much in the public's eye, it was in the media's eye, and there was a lot of kind of technical information, they actually produced an easy read paper, which I think is fantastic. And I hope to see Scottish Government doing more of these things as well. So as well as the longer, kind of more maybe technical consultation paper, they produced an easy read paper to engage with. And they also then gave examples of deposit return schemes across the world. So I think this is a really good showcase of where consultation can be done well to try and break down barriers and make it easier for us all to respond. So always have a look out to see if there's anything. And I think do not be afraid to ask for it. If there isn't an easy read paper or examples, email the consultation email and ask for one, because they've set a precedent now that they'll do it. So it'd be great to see them do more. And then sometimes they can be super easy and it's just a one question consultation. So this was on extending the bathing water season in Scotland. It was basically, do you agree? Yes or no? And why? So sometimes consultations can be super short and super easy and it's just one question. Then there's also others where you can actually just create a response to a question as well. So this was around banning the single-use plastic cotton bud stems. And again, it was a one question. but there wasn't really an opportunity to explain why. So what we did was then just kind of put together a statement and emailed it in as well. So if you feel sometimes there's been a question asked, but there's never been an option to explain why you've maybe wanted to say yes or no, feel free to add that in by just sending it in an email as well, because it all then gets gathered as evidence. And then we'll just nip through a few other quick ones as well. This was around the single-use plastic packaging again, and it was like the next stage. So you will sometimes find that you will be repeating yourselves in consultations. Sometimes a particular issue will have multiple consultations over multiple years. It might cross parliaments, so it's different governments looking at it. So I would always try and save your responses somewhere, because I bet you'll probably have to copy and paste it at some point as well. And if you keep across the dates, it does mean you can kind of hold them to account to say, you did consult on this 3 years ago, nothing has changed, this is what we're still asking for, and now it's even more urgent because it should have already been done. This one was on the wet wipes one for the Welsh Government that we worked on as well. So it's also, if you are very passionate about an issue, you might have friends and family who live across the UK. Tell them the consultations that you're working on, and they might want to be able to see if there's something they can do locally. So definitely share them across the UK. Here's just another example with the deposit return one that you will find you'll be repeating yourself again and again, so make sure you hold on to it. So you've decided you're going to respond to a consultation. Yes, convinced you that it's something that you want to do. That's why Sean's gathered us all here tonight. We're going to get you responding. What do you actually do? So for me, I kind of got a little checklist before I kind of get started. They do always have a closing date. So you do always want to just make sure that you've got that date in your mind, so you're not then doing a panic last minute response or feel really bad that you haven't given it the time. You'll want to check those geographic limitations, make sure that where you live, you are able to respond. If it is a Scottish Government one, or if you're based in another country, make sure that you are able to respond. And also just check those options for sending in responses. Maybe filling in the survey does work for you, but maybe you would prefer to write a letter or a statement and email it in. Maybe you would rather try and go to a meeting and have it verbally done. There's usually lots of different ways to input. And I'd always say look for partners. Responding to consultations does take time, it does take capacity, and I think it's always great to look at, see what other organisations might be out there. I think it's fantastic that Five Climate Hub are doing that, trying to bring people together to do a response and to be able to help more people have their voice heard. So definitely check out to see who else might be doing it, including organisations that might be doing a public response. So we'll share it later on. But for example, for the Seabird consultation that we're looking at tonight, the RSPB have an e-action that you can do on their website. So you can actually look to see, well, what are the RSPB saying? Do I agree with it? Maybe I could do some copy and pasting or referring across to it as well. So never feel like you have to do it all on your own. Definitely look for people or organisations that might be able to support you. And then how to start. It's usually a thing with writer's block, isn't it? Getting started is usually the hardest thing. And what my advice is get your admin right. Create a folder where you'll just save everything to do with that consultation. So that might be the paper, the responders form, maybe there's been articles you found, there's organisations, put all the links in one place. So whenever you're then spending time responding to it, you've got it all together. And then what I do is I do download all the relevant documents from the government website and then create my own versions in that folder. So I know I can write whatever I want in there. No one's going to read it. It can be scrappy, it can be messy, depending on how angry you might be on something. There might be words you wouldn't professionally put in a response, but it makes you feel good that you've at least been able to say it to yourself. And then make yourself a cup of tea, cup of coffee, beverage of choice, and just skim read the consultation paper. Try not take it all in on that first reading. Just skim through it and see what jumps out to you. And then what I usually do is in a blank Word document, and then copy and paste the questions in, so I can just starting to take bullet notes, start to think about questions I might want to look at, what responses might I want to do. And this is how it often looks. I usually have different highlights for the easy questions that I definitely know that I want to answer in yellow. In blue, I'm like, oh, not quite sure how I might respond to that yet, so I'll come back to it. And then I'd also have a look for other opportunities as well. So I mentioned that verbally you can kind of respond to consultations. So quite often there will be stakeholder workshops that will be run by the Scottish Government. So again, if you're on these mailing lists for the consultations, opportunities like that will get shared with you as well. And that's usually really good where you can go along in person or online, and they'll usually kind of facilitate a discussion. And that's how you can kind of get your point across, your opinions, or any research that you might have done as well. Attending events like this really helps when you can actually just meet other people who are wanting to do it, start to figure out who should be responding. Most of the time, public consultations are not written in a way that is public friendly. They can look really intimidating. They can make you feel like you're not an expert, that you shouldn't be responding to this. So events like this can hopefully tell you that yes, public consultations are exactly that. They are open for everybody to have a voice and to let the government know. You have to remember that the government represents us. So they need to hear our voice if they're to act in our best interests as well. And for us, and those of us who are kind of here for environmental and conservation reasons, even more so, because I said earlier, nature, ocean, seabirds can't log online, can't write to a minister. So that's something else that we can take on. If that's another motivation to do this and get that voice heard, know that you're doing it for those who maybe can't. Now, social media, love it or hate it, actually can be a really powerful tool when it comes to consultations as well. Quite often I will share it when consultations come up just to let people know it's happening, get people thinking about who might want to work together, how they want to respond as well. So if you are responding to the Seabird one or to any consultation, I definitely pop it up on social media. You might then start to encourage more people to take part, and you also might to start to hear other voices, other things that you maybe haven't considered that can make your response even better. And then the very last thing is, after all of that work, you want to make sure that you submit before the deadline. Now, what I found with public consultations is they usually say something like, it'll close on at midnight on Monday. I don't know about anyone else, but that always confuses me, as is that 12 o'clock on Sunday night or is that 12 o'clock on Monday night? So my just personal thing is I always send it in 48 hours before the deadline, so it's all okay. However, most of the time, if you wake up and realize you haven't sent it, still use the email address to send it in. The portal might have closed, but make sure that all of that work that you've done, you'll be able to send that in as a PDF. And I would say 9 times out of 10, as long as you've sent it within that 24-hour window, the civil servants will accept it and will still look at it as well. So definitely don't throw it out if you suddenly realize that you have missed it. And basically, then thank you for giving the ocean a voice, and thank you for taking that action on making your voice heard as well. It's just one thing that we can all do to kind of get engaged with policy, get engaged with advocacy, and it's just a really easy way to do it. And hopefully it's inspired you all to take part. But if anyone's got any questions, please do let me know. Pop things in the chat as well, and I'll share these slides with Sean so they can go around to everyone. But that's just my kind of personal approach to consultations. Once you start doing it, you'll figure out your own strategy and way for doing it as well. And it will probably change over time and change as consultations go as well. But thanks for having me, Sean, and I'll hand back over to you.
That was impressive. You nailed the timing very well. You said 25 minutes past. You're pretty much bang on. So we will stop for 5 minutes now. Or you know what? Just because I'm a little bit pedantic and I want it to be exactly on 1/2 past, we'll stop for 6 minutes. So at at 1/2 past, if you could come back, get a hot drink. Because there might be a lot of talking, and if you're like me and are struggling not to cough every 5 minutes, then it might be good to have a hot drink. It's basically so I can get a hot drink right now. Okay, see you in 5. So I had the task of basically going through and basically explaining all the threats that there are to seabirds and what the action plan is, all within 5 minutes. But seeing as we have a smaller group, I'll take a little bit more of my time, as it was quite an ask. But here we are. I'm going to introduce you to what the main threats are. But before I even get to that, oh, are you seeing my screen shared? Right. Oh, good. Oh, good stuff. Okay, that's good stuff. Before that, just a little bit of an introduction about which underpins a lot about why seabirds being in trouble is a big issue. And one of that is that seabirds are essentially, as of a news article that I read last week, referred to as the Great Barrier Reef of Scotland. They are of such significance and on a global scale that they are, compared to the Great Barrier Reef. And seabirds, they are case selective, which is a fancy way of saying that instead of being copulatory maximizers and having as many children as possible, they actually have relatively low numbers of offspring and actually take a great deal of care of them, which is, and they actually have to. This is important because they need that sort of high survival rate in order to combat the fact that they don't have a lot of young. They also live in colonies, and if anyone has ever been to the RSPB Reserve in Aberdeen, I highly recommend it. You will know that the colonies are incredibly compact. There's so many birds. Once you get out of your car in that reserve, you can hear it, you can smell it. It's an all-encompassing experience going to see these seabirds, and that has problems too. It means that there is high levels of competition for food in the area and also for nesting sites themselves. It also means that they are densely populated, which is incredibly significant when you consider things like the bird flu, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail in a second. Some direct sort of human disturbances. Exploitation is not really much of an issue here anymore. There are still a long history of in the culture in places like Greenland Islands and the Faroes of eating birds, seabirds, gathering their eggs. They use their oil as well for something. I'm not really sure about that, but anyway. Here, probably more of an issue is disturbance from visitors, especially from dogs. You often see these signs saying "keep your dog on the leash to protect from nesting birds." They will just abandon their nests, and that causes a real big problem. Also, introduction of rats and feral cats. These directly prey on the birds and the eggs and the young. Interactions with fisheries. Bycatch is obviously a big one. The main threats are long lining, which is a huge long line of which has individually baited hooks, and there actually is a lot of ways to mitigate this. You can put down pingers, which there's not really a lot of evidence of, like sound deflecting seabirds, but also visual aids. They can, with gill nets, they can weight them so they're a bit lower in the water, which can prevent them from being caught. Anyway, also prey availability discards. If you are following the current tribunal between the European Union and the UK government, essentially, the Conservative Party put in place a law to stop sand eels, which are sand eel fishing, which is a main prey of a lot of our seabirds, including puffins. And Denmark refuted this and raised it to EU. And now there is a big tribunal, which was 3 days long last week, about essentially trying to get them to overturn the law to actually allow them to fish sand eels again, which would be disastrous for our seabirds. Pollution. I could go into a lot of details about this, but essentially metals and organic chlorides, things like DDT, they're really bad for seabirds. They cause the eggs to be really thin and fragile. The metals cause like mercury cause problems with their brains essentially. But I'll skip over this because I shouldn't spend too long on these things. Plastics, obviously direct contact with plastics, things like entanglement from ghost nets and other sources of plastics. Also just consumption. It can affect 95% of individuals. Oil. So again, the sort of image that you tend to get is this sort of image of really sort of sticky tar-like substance covering the birds, but just like sort of prolonged exposure from the seabirds in water where there are a little bit of extra oils in the water. It can cause loss of insulation, which or buoyancy, which means it can literally freeze or drown. Disease. There is. Sorry, I should have said there are pictures of dead birds in this slide. I should have said. I'm so sorry. I hope I'm. I should have said. I'm so sorry. I hope that's not a problem for anyone. Um. Anyway. Um. The obviously this will be the big thing at the moment. Is bird flu, particularly the strain called highly pathogenic avian influenza. It has affected 21 out of 25 of UK's regular breeding birds. The worst affected are gannets, and interesting fun fact for you: when gannets get immunity to this particular strain, their irises go from a blue to a black color. You're all nodding along. You already know this fun fact. You know this fun fact already. And also, the great schooler has had a 75% decline. Apparently, last year was it was slightly less impacted than the previous 2 years. So things are getting better. Um, Obviously, we are the climate hub, so I can't not talk about climate change. And climate change underpins all of this. Without even disease, for example, without tackling climate change, we're not giving the birds enough time to develop resistance to these sort of diseases, for example. It directly affects prey availability. It affects sand eels. It affects all a lot of these things, and we need to give the birds some time to recover. So, what are the key actions? I'm gonna have a little drink. It is just tea, not like a drink. I just want ensuring food supplies. So again, sort of that protecting of foraging fish like sand eels by restricting fishing and enhancing the fishing habitats, contribute to that international fishery management discussions, perhaps restricting fishing in marine protected areas might be a good idea. Um, restoring, restoring and improving habitats, so controlling invasive predators and improving biosecurity on seabird islands. Um, Oh, I had a fun fact for you because it's Fife. Another climate change aspect. Sorry, I've thrown this out there, but I just want to say the Isle of May is a reserve, and Fife is the only RSPB reserve on Fife, I believe, and that is a particularly under threat because of climate change, because of storm surges and from coastal erosion. So I thought that was interesting. Anyway, so anyway, restoring habitats, so expanding breeding and foraging sites, and sort of maximizing the resilience and survival by reducing bycatch. Again, there's so much you can do with fishing gear, but also just trying to restrict fishing and probably key nesting sites would be a good idea too, or where seabirds are particularly completely dense. Minimizing risks from marine developments, including offshore winds, at least being part of the conversation about the expansion of offshore wind farms, and sort of looking at mitigationary measures there, tackling marine litter and avian disease threats. And then some other key actions to build on scientific evidence, expanding seabird monitoring programs, enhancing research, raising public awareness, engaging with communities on conservation initiatives, and also promoting responsible tourism. Again, we talked about that earlier, and how human disturbance, especially dogs and nesting sites, and sort of global collaboration, working internationally to reduce seabird bycatch and habitat loss, and contributing to conservation strategies across seabird migration routes. So this action plan takes a sort of strategic evidence-based approach to seabird conservation, ensuring a targeted, coordinated effort for long-term success. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing. And we are going to, sorry, really bad flu. Anyway, I'm going to share a little Padlet that we have, which is on the 4 questions. It's only 4 questions long on the public consultation. And if you'd like to unmute, and if you'd like to if you want, if you feel comfortable to turn your screen on, and we can have a little discussion about each question and go through the public consultation. And this will be part of Five Climate Hub's response to the public consultation. So we're actually going to have a sort of go at it. This could be a practice for your own public response to the public consultation. And this your contributions today will help inform our own Five Climate Hub group consultation. So I've just put in the chat there. Hope everyone's
I just
got
wanted
access
to
to it.
say, Sean, when you first shared this Padlet with me, I thought it was a fantastic way to make a consultation a little bit more less intimidating and scary. The fact that there is a lovely puffin behind it is amazing. And actually just, I know this consultation is maybe a little bit easier because it is just 4 questions and that makes it easier. But I think you might be starting a trend because I'm pretty sure on recent circular economy measures, I saw the government put out something very similar like this to be able to just, people can just literally, I mean, it's like social media, isn't it? To be able to heart it, to comment on it. And it's almost like responding to a consultation by accident. You don't actually realize that's what you're doing. So just want to say well done. And I think
Oh,
it's a really nice way
I
to
can't
engage
take
people.
credit for this. This was Andy's idea was to make a Padlet, but the puffin was my idea.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Both are important.
I've just shared my screen. Can everybody see it?
No, I can't see it actually.
Oh, shall I try again?
Yeah.
I forget to press the last button. And then if anybody wants to speak, I can write in. Well, anybody can write in, I guess, if you can click on the link. But if Albert and Jennifer, are you up for a discussion?
Hmm. Nope.
I'm up for a discussion. I'm just struggling to see because I'm on my phone. So if I'm like right up against the screen, it's just me
Sure.
trying to read.
No.
I don't know if there's a way of could I access it on the laptop from the link in your email?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Yeah, let me figure out how to do that.
There's a link in the chat. Sean's put it in the chat.
It's just because that's open on my phone.
I'll email the Padlet link to your email, Violet, because I've got your email, and then you should be able to pick it up on your
Brilliant.
laptop if you like.
Thank you. Sorry, I just looked at my email and it's absolutely full. So even though the the Eventbrite link was quite soon to the top, it's like just make sure it's not the Clean Coast one, Catherine, because I think if you're accidentally still going there.
So the first question is, in the meantime, is do you support the implication of the Scottish Seabird Conservation Action Plan? So it is a yes, no, unsure question answer, but there's an option to explain your answer. So I'm gonna add a little bit myself and just do a Sean answer.
So the action plan is what you described earlier.
Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
So if you
I did send out the consultation action plan in advance. If everyone's had, I hope people have had a chance to read it. But that was my very abridged summary of like how do I condense this into as brief a bit as possible.
And I guess applying some of the kind of tips from the presentation, if you haven't had a chance to read it yet either, you can just give a gut response. Because I think to me, reading something like, do you support the implementation of a Seabird Conservation Action Plan? To me, I'm like, well, surely yes. That sounds like a great idea. You might not have had a chance to read it yet, but if you think that sounds good, so what you could do just now is say, yes, I think that's a good idea. Or maybe you think, no, I don't think it's a good idea. You would go away, have a wee look, and then come back to see if it would then change your answer and add a little bit of explanation as well.
Oh, we're getting a new person joining. Hello, Zoe. You've missed a bit. Unfortunately.
There's still time to respond on
But
the
there's still
Padlet.
time to respond. So we've just sent out a Padlet into the chat. I'll send it again because I'm not sure whether it'll come through if you've just joined. Um, so we're just now doing our own response by adding some comments to the 4 questions here that will form the Fife Climate Hub response to the public consultation.
So Sean, why do you think we should support this implementation?
Well, I guess it's seabirds are important, and I think we should. There's quite a lot of threats to seabirds. They have we are an important nesting site globally for a lot of species, and I think we need to take a little bit of responsibility for the fact that we are this important nesting site for a lot of species. Um, so yeah, I think I think yeah, I think it there's a lot as I said, there's a lot of threats, and we need to. Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought.
I'm just writing it down. Shall I say it's the Great Barrier Reef?
Yep. I mean, I did steal that from an article that came out in the Scotsman about wind farms, essentially, kind of a sort of anti-wind farm thing. But I liked the comparison. It does emphasize how important they are,
I
and it's
agree.
something.
Another kind of tip that actually just across the sector, everyone always says when you're responding to consultations as an individual, as a citizen, like share personal stories. If you, like when you mentioned earlier on about the Isle of May, Sean, like if you have somewhere you go, or if you've had an amazing encounter with seabirds, or there's just something like share that personal connection in that story, because that's
Right.
really powerful. So definitely any personal, and even if that, because anecdotal evidence is still really important, if perhaps maybe when you went to visit the site in Aberdeenshire, you actually saw all these amazing birds, but you also saw about 10% of the nests had plastic in them. That's a
Right.
good thing
Okay.
to put in. So it doesn't have to be a fully researched scientific study. Like your personal experiences are really good to put in as individual responses.
Ah, that's interesting.
It's a shame you can't put in pictures. I've got so many pictures of seabird nests with plastic in them. I could show them. Like, I feel like visually that's a
So I would say
um
you definitely want to share those on social media when you hopefully do your post to say that you're responding. But I
yeah,
would also use the consultation email address and send them over.
and just send them in. Yeah,
Yeah.
that I'm going to write that down as well, actually.
And you can just
Um,
say this is extra evidence to go alongside your written response, and I think that would be great.
Okay, so we'll just move on. I don't know whether we're still a little bit short on time here, but we'll press on to the second question, which is, do you agree that the key pressures to seabirds in Scotland are identified? Again, it's a yes, no, or unsure. Um, again, I think personally, I think they have been identified. I don't think there was anything missing there. But if you have anything that you think wasn't talked about, then yeah, feel free to add that as well, um, because that's also an option in this response here.
So do we feel it's pretty comprehensive, the pressures that they've identified? I mean, it did to me.
Yeah.
I think you put across quite well, Sean, as well, that there are so many pressures that surely is another reason why we need the plan, because you need like a kind of holistic overview of how do some of them you can tackle one on one, but a lot of the time all these pressures are interconnected, aren't they? So it's all about, I'd say for this one, it's all about how we're using the sea better and also what we're all doing that impacts it and the seabirds. So I felt the list that you shared was pretty comprehensive.
Thank you.
But it was also, even though in that question it says, if no, please provide detail, please also provide detail if you've said yes and you want to add anything else in, because you can still agree and maybe explain why, or if there's any other kind of context. So you don't always have to strictly follow what they've said. So definitely use that box if you wanted to say yes and also add some context.
Does anybody want to, add things to the chat that I can put in the box if you're feeling shy or?
I'm just typing it in on the laptop. I'll be 1 second.
You can say and I can write it in if that's what you'd prefer.
I think faster and type
Oh,
than out loud. I
I
feel like
wonder.
out loud I start rambling too.
So, I mean, from what Sean said, and what I feel as well is that climate change is the overall biggest pressure. If you need to address that and the loss of habitat, no?
So yeah, I think the thing with the it's definitely climate change underpins it all. I think the like immediate like really scary thing is the bird flu, the highly infectious avian influenza. So that's the sort of like possibly, hopefully short term, but like most urgent threat. And climate change is that sort of threat that underpins all the threats. So yeah, um, both really. I
Most
guess
immediate, urgent
yeah,
threat.
and I guess the thing with highly infectious avian influenza is that hopefully eventually the birds develop resilience to it, and then it's no longer as much of a threat. But it's obviously had as I said earlier, like massive effects on gannets and skuas and various other seabirds.
Oh, there, well done, Violet.
Sorry, it's a bit of a rant, but it's comes from the heart.
Uh, so we've only got 5 minutes left, so we're gonna push through to the third question, and I'm going to you know uh, write more later because I don't want to miss the opportunity to get all an answer from everyone here um, while we have you. Um, so have we captured the key actions needed to deliver the vision, aims, and objectives? Um,
If it helps from like a policy manager's perspective, usually when the government asks you this, it's usually no, because they usually haven't got everything in there. So because I haven't read it, I would probably put unsure just now to come back and add to. But usually the areas that aren't identified as having a proper action plan is timescales to be able to hold them to account if they've said they're going to do this action, by when, and then how are they going to monitor it? Monitoring is usually something that's either missing or a bit weak. And then the last thing that's usually either missing or a bit weak is funding. And this action plan is great, but if you haven't got the funding behind to actually deliver it, it's just a piece of paper. So those are just kind of questions I usually always think about, whatever the policy is. If they're basically saying, have we covered everything in our aims and objectives? Those are things that usually you want to specifically look at, because usually it's no.
and we'll just do. I'll do the fourth one as well, just so that we can, type away at our leisure, and I won't have to interrupt your flow anymore. Do you have any views on what measures we should use to monitor progress and success? I've got a cool idea for this one, but I'm gonna type it in so nobody steals my idea. Anyway,
Can't you share it? I'd love to hear your idea.
all right. I want to do like have a sort of app and have like a sort of Scotland-wide citizen science project where are able to help monitor bird populations by sightings. Something like Great British Birdwatch, with the same sort of rules, but not necessarily just one weekend a year. Maybe all year round, perhaps. and more digital as well. I don't know exactly how it would work, but I think it would be probably a good way to measure bird populations. I think the only problem would be, repeat viewings, but as long as you sort of follow the sort of rules of, staying in one place, I think it could be and for an hour, and the same sort of citizen science rules. I think it could work nicely.
Well, I let you type that in so that you get the credit for it then, Sean.
Okay, yeah, that's important,
I've just said I think that they need more money. Like if you're going to tackle habitat loss and climate change, I'd put that in the other one. So, and working in an organization which is annually funded and causes us all kinds of trouble. We think that, I just don't feel that they're putting enough money into climate change. So, whether arguing about whether it should go on other things is it doesn't matter, because we're talking about seabirds, and as you're saying, they're like a key, what's the word? Identification. They identify. Come on, you client bird people.
Is it you call them a keystone? Is that what
Keystone,
you would
or
say?
they're like an indicator.
Yeah, in the way that like invertebrates are in pond things. Like if you know what's going on with your invertebrates, you know what's going on with the greater kind of biosphere.
Yeah. Yeah, like an indicator, yeah.
Indicator
Yeah.
species.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say for this last question, it's a really good opportunity if you're thinking whenever governments are consulting on plans or strategies, it's when is this being reviewed? And there has to be like, is this reviewed annually, every 2 years, every 3 years? You want to make sure that they've committed to reviewing it. And it's really interesting actually how questions can be interpreted, because I was like, how do they measure or monitor the progress of the plan as well?
Oh,
Whereas
right.
you're right, that's also definitely the space, because surely if you're monitoring your seabird population and they're doing better, it maybe suggests that the plan has done its job, but it might be because you've come up with another amazing project, Sean, and you've actually just single-handedly saved all the seabirds, and it's nothing to do with the government's plan. So
Right.
it's definitely again thinking about what to like what can they do to make sure this plan is effective. So I think you could probably talk about funding in this question again as well. But also that commitment to making sure that it's reviewed, it's owned, and actions are updated. It's great to have an action plan, but surely you need progress updates to make sure, is it on track? Is it fallen behind? Are they ahead of schedule? And that kind of monitoring as well. And that can pretty much get applied to any kind of plan or action strategy that government might be consulting on. It's usually good things to add in.
I put the link to the Padlet in the chat. So if people want to get a cup of tea, as you say, and do this later on, then we can add this as you could do your own individual response, and then we can also respond as a climate hub.
Well, that is us timing wise. It was very good to have you, and I'm sorry if it was a little bit of a rush, but it was meant to be, short and compact, and I think it was very nice to do this with you. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you very much, and I don't really know what else to say. Andy, do you have anything else to say?
Thank you to you both for your presentations. They were both very interesting. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Catherine. Are you still there, Catherine? Don't know.
She is.
I'm still
Sorry,
here, don't worry.
sorry. You've left my screen for some reason. I don't know why. But yeah, thank you very much, Catherine, for coming to the event. It was really great to have your insight. It was really valuable, and I hope we can work together again. Okay, so I will end the meeting now, but you're absolutely, be great to, if you could, if you have any final thoughts on the Padlet, if you could put them down, but this is your own time now, or so feel free to, yeah, anyway, I'm
Thank
talking
you.
too much.
All
Sorry.
right.
Thank you. Thank
We'll
you both.
email
That was
everything.
really good.
Okay,
Really
bye-bye.
appreciate your time.